Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to Small Talk with Amina. Today, where I am, I'm feeling a huge mix of emotions. I'm feeling nostalgic, I'm feeling patriotic, I feel a sense of belonging. I'm at the Consulate General of Pakistan in New York, and I'm going to be talking to the Consul General herself of Pakistan in New York, Miss Ayesha Ali. Assalamu alaikum, Ayesha.
Assalamu alaikum,
Welcome, and we're very pleased to have you with us.
Thank you so much.
Ayesha Ali is obviously one of the very few women who have made it this far in the echelons of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Obviously, a no small feat, but surely it didn't happen on a whim. I'm sure there's a whole story behind it. We're going to ask Ayesha to tell us her story, her journey, her lows, her highs. So, Ayesha, a master's in English literature, a master's in international public policy affairs from Johns Hopkins. Was this always the goal? Is this where you always wanted to be?
I think more or less.
Yeah.
Being a diplomat and representing your country, I think there can be no calling higher than this. So, as a young child growing up in Pakistan, this was something that I always thought about, and obviously with a lot of help and a lot of support from my parents and also the people around me, some of whom were associated with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs.
Okay. So you have a family background in foreign affairs. Were there family members who kind of edged you on? Like, I know my dad was a physician, so we were like, oh, we have, so our path was kind of predefined. Okay, we have to be physicians. Was that something for you too?
Some of it, I could say yes, but foreign policy, diplomacy, relationships between countries, regional politics, that was something that was always really there
For you?
For me, and
Okay.
which interested me right from the word go. Like when I was a teenager, I was reading about this stuff, and I was thinking about those things and how it was impacting the countries, the relationships, and also most importantly the people who live in those countries.
That's very interesting because that's not a normal conversation you'd have with like a 13-year-old. They'd be interested in, maybe sports. They'd be interested in music. Back then, okay. But that's like a very different direction that a 13-year-old would take. But then again, you had some precedents at home, so that's kind of where it took you. And I know, obviously, being a consul general is not your first stint in foreign affairs. You've held multiple positions over the years. This you've been doing from 2019, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. And you've had multiple positions over the years and also been in different countries. Is there something amongst all those positions that you've held, all those places that you've been in, all those experiences that you've had that kind of stands out, that maybe was a defining moment in your career? I'm sure there were many, maybe one.
There are several, and the best thing about the Foreign Office work is that you're always doing something different and something more challenging.
Okay.
And maybe more challenging than your last position. So our work at the headquarters, which is the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, can be at times very different from the kind of work that we do in our missions, in our diplomatic missions abroad. So thinking back about all the positions that I've held both at the headquarters and in the missions, it would be very difficult to come up with just one experience. But I was very fortunate to have served in our mission in New Delhi as a political counselor.
Okay.
And because of the historic nature of the relationship between the two countries, I think it was a very, very unique experience. Most of my work, when I think about it, has been political bilateral, which is between countries, because there are different types of diplomacy and there's different types of work that we do. And my work here in New York as a Consul General is something that is totally different from the kind of positions that I had held earlier, because this is about the community and this is about directly dealing with the people of Pakistani descent who live in the United States. And our consulate, as you know, caters to the largest concentration of Pakistani Americans in the US. So we have around 11 states in our jurisdiction and the largest concentration of Pakistanis. So it's been a unique experience and a huge honor.
Yeah. So it's actually almost like a switch of jobs, because previously you were more engaging with foreign offices, with officials, but here you're dealing with the masses, you're dealing with the public, right? Yeah, so that definitely, going back to your experience in New Delhi, I know you worked in various countries, and we've had over the years, we've had tumultuous relationships with India. Sometimes, we're on great terms, sometimes not as great. So when you were there, did you feel any kind of hostility, any difficulty in actually executing your duties or anything at all?
I get this question a lot.
I'm sure you do, yeah.
And, some relationships can be more challenging than others.
Definitely, yeah.
But as long as you know that you're working for a purpose, as long as you know that your job at the end of the day is conflict resolution and helping the two countries resolve differences and conflicts, I think it's a reward in itself.
Yeah, I'm sure.
So it is
because
something
you're building bridges, right?
You're building bridges, and this is the job of a diplomat. So a very challenging environment at times, but also as I said, a unique learning experience as well.
So at the end of the day, you come home more fulfilled than maybe some other jobs that you may have held. That you're probably making a difference, bridge a gap between two countries who are not always on great terms.
I would say most of the jobs would be fulfilling in their own different ways, as I said, because all the experiences are different.
Yeah. So another thing that I was thinking while I was coming over, I was like, how hard it is to be always politically correct, because we have the luxury of, kind of sometimes just saying our mind, because I'm not always under a public eye, I'm not always under scrutiny. So how hard it is to be always politically correct, whatever you watch, whatever's coming out of your mouth, is that something that you have to do?
It is something that you should think about, because whatever you say as a representative of the country, no matter where you are, is always going to be important. And it's also important to have your own personal credibility as well, so that you are taken as a serious colleague or as a serious person. So I think it's important that we should come across as credible while conveying the message that we have to convey.
Yeah, but does it take a toll on you? Like, do you always have to kind of pre-think your conversations, be like, okay, this is not something that should be coming out of my mouth?
No, you can be candid. You can definitely be candid.
Okay, yes. So there are moments when you can be candid too.
That
Okay,
helps too.
All right, because I figured it would make your job very difficult, because I know I'm the kind of person who just say whatever comes out of my head, and then I was thinking that you obviously do not have the luxury of that. But like you said, it's important. You're representing the country, so people are definitely holding you to a higher standard. They're looking towards you as someone who represents the country, which is obviously a great honor. So also, I know that, like you said, you've been in different countries, you've been in different places, held different positions. So how has that impacted your personal life? I know you have 2 children, right?
So it's always a task, moving from one place to another, and because it's not just a place, but it's the whole culture that you experience.
Right.
You're not there as a visitor.
Right.
You're there as a representative of your country. You're also there as a person who would be living in that new environment for the next maybe 3 years. So it's not, at times it's not as glamorous as it sounds like, because there are logistical issues, and as you mentioned, family and children. So as children grow up, and it can be more challenging when they were younger, because you're changing languages, your entire cultural social environment, your acquaintances, friends, people that you interact with, the languages that you speak, the currency that you use. Everything changes overnight, but such is the job of a diplomat, that you're actually trained to work under challenging circumstances, no matter what you're doing. Even as someone who's working in the headquarters and stationed at one place, you are in certain jobs required to travel a lot. You could be responsible for, let's say, a group of countries, a group of 20 countries or 25 countries, and then you're always on the go. You're traveling, you're meeting people, and then it's not just one country or one interlocutor. It's a bunch of people that you're meeting every couple of weeks. So it has its own challenges, but it can be very dynamic, it can be very interesting, and obviously it is educational, and it is.
Yeah, I was thinking that obviously it provides them, your family, I mean obviously not only you, but your family provides with a wealth of experience, right? Your children have, your children have probably been exposed to a multitude of different environments, situations, and
educational systems.
To say the least. I don't even know how they did it.
Yeah.
So actually, the point that I was trying to make is that obviously it's a wealth of experience, but also does it provide? Is there any hint of maybe instability that comes with all this, like constant movement, constant, like you said, it's so dynamic? Has that been a challenge too?
I think it can be a challenge for everyone, and not just the diplomats, but people who are required in their jobs to move every few years. So it all depends on the kind of, it depends on a number of factors, the kind of person you are, the kind of vision you have for your life, how you handle pressures, how you see, your own life and your personality evolving at the end of the day as a result of your experiences. So yes, it's at times it can be a tough balance to maintain. But
But it seems like you've been doing a great job of it.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
So also, coming to your present job over here, I know your job is more to deal with the community, but I'm sure in your everyday workings you do come across with other political counterparts. There are lots of meetings and conversations that are ongoing. So how has been, and you've been here since 2019, so that's almost coming close to 4 years. And how has your experience been over here with the Pakistani community? I'm sure you can compare Pakistani communities back home and then in different other situations, environments. How do people over here differ, or is there any difference between communities here and that you've experienced elsewhere?
That's a very interesting and very good question. Our community, I think, in the jurisdiction of this consulate, the people that I have been dealing with for the last 3.5 years, I think it's one of the most dynamic groups that I've come across. And it is a big community. It's a growing community, and it's a diverse community. We have close to 300,000 people of Pakistani descent living in the tri-state area and other areas, going all the way up to Maine and New Hampshire. Estimated to be about 1 million in the US and about 300,000 in our jurisdiction. So there's all sorts of groups within the community that we come across and deal with and provide consular services to. There's people like yourself who are physicians. The largest group, I think, is the physicians. A lot of them who came from Pakistan and are now settled here and have lives and work here. And then there's a lot of others who are professionals, who are both blue collar, white collar. It's a big group, diverse group. Community is, alhamdulillah, doing very well in terms of their financial outlook and how they have settled here and how they've been able to build these amazing lives that they have. So in terms of my work, I deal mainly with the community, but also obviously there's an office of the State Department that is in the city of New York itself, and deals with consular and diplomatic missions. And then through our community organizations, as well as bilaterally also with a large number of elected officials, with people from different walks of life, Americans other than Pakistani Americans, There's the media also, ethnic as well as local American. So a very interesting mix, which I think will be very difficult for me to describe, in just a few minutes.
Okay, but so a very diverse community,
very
right?
diverse.
Ranging from like white collar to blue collar, obviously with their own issues and problems. So in terms of experiences, you're in the public eye a lot. You're communicating with different government counterparts, different governments, different countries. Have you ever? And I know this is obviously not an easy job, being in the public eye and everything. Felt threatened or felt in any way compromised while you've held this position over the years?
Not really.
No.
Not really. And when I talk about my experience in New York, I also wanted to share with you that I am the first woman Consul General from Pakistan.
Oh, that's definitely a great
from
honor.
the Foreign Office. A huge honor, and we had one woman Consul General in the late 1970s here earlier, but the first one in 30 years from the Foreign Office. So I think it has been an experience which is so diverse in its in so many different ways. To see a woman as a Consul General is also something that's a new experience for the community itself. We've had a few, one in Houston, another one in Los Angeles, but for New York it was the first time ever. So I guess that was also something that I'm extremely honored to have been chosen for that position.
And that's one of the things that I was also going to kind of address too, because there are two aspects of it. The community that we come from, Pakistani community, right? So it's patriarchal, right? And it's a male-dominated society. Women always have to work harder to prove themselves. At least that's been. I think things are changing now, but that's been the case in the past. And then you just alluded to it, that you're the first woman Consul General from the Foreign Office in New York. So obviously, again, kind of a place where it's mostly male domination or predominance of males. So it must have taken quite something to get to this point.
And especially on top of that, when I arrived here in 2019, this was followed very closely by a global pandemic.
Yes.
So being in New York, taking care of the
worst hit area.
The worst hit, absolutely. The epicenter of the epidemic in this country. And for us, that was again, a challenge that nobody actually foresaw. I mean, nobody knew in the world that this was.
We haven't had a pandemic in 100 years.
Exactly.
Yeah,
the way we were able to deal with it in terms of how we kept our office open throughout those very, dark days when there were innumerable deaths per day.
Yeah, be available for the community must have been a challenge.
And the transition from in-person to online services.
Yes.
I think this is a story that needs to be told. How we have now transitioned from in-person visa, passport, and other consular services to digital services, where people are no longer required to actually come to the Consulate General and can have those services available to them via the internet through our portals, is something that I think I and my team can, be very proud of.
Yeah, definitely.
And also the fact that so many hundreds of people from this region got stranded when the flights, when flights could not go to any part of the world during the pandemic, and to be able to serve the people and to have special flights, to arrange special flights for the people in the midst of the pandemic is something that I am very proud of as a Consul General, because I was able to help the people in a very difficult situation.
And I'm glad you brought it up, because that's not something that a lot of us are aware of, because we are not aware of the challenges that you as a Consulate General of Pakistan had to face amidst that pandemic, like you said, arranging for flights, making sure that people
were safe, that people had financial assistance, that people had accommodation, that people were not stranded without any help. That's when everything was closed and people obviously had to stay at home and deal with their own situations. Make sure that our staff on rotation, obviously, with all the safeguards in place, our staff would be able to come to the office and help people who really needed, the in-person services. So to be able to do that for 2 years and to still maintain your contact with the community, to be there, to help them, to serve them, I think has been a truly rewarding experience.
Yeah, and that definitely needs to be commended and acknowledged because, like I said, most of us are not even aware of the challenges that you went through. We were all dealing with health issues. We were all dealing with things.
Yes.
And of challenges of keeping ourselves safe and all that. But these things never came to our mind, which you were definitely working hard on. And it must have been very challenging times too, in addition to everything else that you were dealing with on a personal level too, because it was a personally very challenging time for everybody too.
But I'm glad that it's behind us, and the lessons that we have drawn from it have been really, really useful in terms of serving the community, in terms of being active on the social media so that people can actually reach out, in terms of continuing to improve our digital services. And this has been a consistent message from the government of Pakistan as well, that diaspora matters, that we are there to help and to serve and to make these services as accessible as we can, and to be as available to help as we can be.
Definitely. No, you're definitely doing a great job. The coming back to some of that, I know that you've been very instrumental in putting Pakistan's face on the map too. I was just and like you said, you've been very, very active and vigilant with being on the social media. There are constant Twitter updates and everything. In fact, the other day I was looking at where you were a part of that resolution that was put in the House of Representatives by Jamal Bowen to declare March 23rd as Pakistan Day. I think that's a huge achievement in itself too.
And I think our diaspora really takes the lead in it. We have several Pakistani American individuals as well as organizations that work very closely with their elected officials. And despite living in this country now and being the citizens of another country, the causes that are important for Pakistan are also very important for our Pakistani American community members and for these organizations. So I want to especially mention APAG, which is American Pakistani Advocacy Group, which has really taken the lead in presenting these resolutions, both in the New York State Assembly and now, as you recently mentioned, in the US House of Representatives. So people out there who've always been there for Pakistan, and I also want to especially thank the Pakistani American community in terms of the assistance that they offered in the aftermath of the devastating floods in Pakistan. As always, the Pakistani American communities, in terms of the donations, in terms of the visits, in terms of facilitation, has really, really been out there helping the government of Pakistan and the people of Pakistan.
Pakistani community, I have to admit, has always been very generous. And every time
raising millions and millions of dollars.
In a matter of days, people just pour in.
And
just
also,
get together.
sort of contributing with their time. And time is the most precious thing. And I've seen several groups of people reach out to the people in trouble or people who need that kind of assistance in Pakistan after the floods. So I'm very, very grateful to everyone.
And we're definitely grateful to you for the leadership that you provided in all these aspects. One thing, it's kind of a little on the sad note because, during I'm sure you are more up to speed on all of this than any one of us, is we're currently facing very tumultuous political times back home. So how does that impact your job? How does that make your representation of the country more challenging, more difficult? I'm sure you're faced with these questions all the times when you're having meetings and conversations with people our community as well as other communities. So how does that impact your job?
You're definitely right. For a developing country, there can be times that are more challenging than some other times. There have been times, and mostly Pakistanis, because we're very entrepreneurial, we're very hardworking. We make the best of the situation
Right.
that we find ourselves in. We're known for that. We're a resilient nation, and we always, at the end of it, come together. And what matters most to all of us is that the country should be on strong economic footings. It should be doing well. My message to everyone in the community is always to keep the faith, to have that faith. We can have our differences, we can have our candid conversations, but what I have seen and what my experience has been in the last few years is that at the end of the day, when it comes to Pakistan's interests, when it comes to to making a contribution, we tend to think almost in terms of how can we as an individual or as a group do our best for Pakistan, and that is the spirit I think that we need to keep alive and to focus more on.
Yeah. And that's the message you convey when you
When I meet with people,
Yeah.
keep the faith.
Yeah, when you're met with challenging scenarios or questions. So, what does the future hold for Ayesha?
In terms, if you're asking in terms of professional work,
Yeah.
so as you know, our tenures in most countries are for a certain period of time,
Okay.
and then when that time is coming close to its end, we're usually either going for another assignment or an assignment back at home. So a time to change
Okay.
the scenario
Yeah.
and to start thinking at the next big assignment.
So always ready for a change, right?
Always ready. Change is the
Change is the only constant, yeah. And that definitely stands true for your life and your job. Okay, so one last question. We've spoken about your career, we've spoken about your job, we've spoken about, your everyday life. So what is Ayesha who's not the Consulate General? Who's that person?
Oh, and that is a person that's still evolving and thinking about, other than your job and your professional life and what you do as a professional. There can be other interests and hobbies.
Right, of course. That's the Ayesha I want to know.
That's the Ayesha that reads a lot, that wants to maybe work out a bit, relax, drinks too much coffee for her own good, that kind of thing. Yeah.
Okay.
Relaxes with her children.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. That sounds like a fun Ayesha.
Yeah.
From whatever time you can take away from obviously a very, very demanding job. So I think you are a great example for any kind of professional, but especially for women, because you've come this far in a field that's not women dominated. That's probably hard for women to navigate, but how much of that? Because I know in our society, it's hard for women to get somewhere without a lot of support, without a lot of familial support, without a lot of social support.
Totally.
So has that been a factor in you getting to where you are?
I think totally.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have been anywhere without my family. And I think we need to really focus on, in Pakistan as well as in our communities wherever we live abroad, on issues that have to deal with women's empowerment, with education, with giving them that confidence and being role models. As you know, as we speak, our Minister of State for Foreign Affairs is a woman.
Yes.
Minister of State Hina Rabbani Kar. She's also been a minister previously as well. So women role models, actually, I think they matter and they need to be seen in those roles.
Yes.
It's always a journey, and I believe it's not only a journey for women in Pakistan, but women generally.
Yeah, correct.
When we celebrate these International Women's Days and other such, events which need to be celebrated, when we look at the history of women's movement, there's so much that has been achieved, but so much that needs to be done still.
Yeah.
In order to ensure that we have a level playing field for women everywhere in the world, and not just in developing countries. I talk about the developed countries as well, where women are still earning less than men, where there are lesser women CEOs than men, where women in sports are earning less, where the technological divide, where women are, where we don't have so many women in the tech world compared to maybe some traditional jobs. So all those gaps, we need to think about them, and we need to work on them, and not only in the context of of a developing country, but also in the context
women in general, all over
women
the world.
in general, because as I said, it has been an interesting journey for women. The history is very inspirational, the women's movement for their rights, but there's still so much more that remains to be done.
Exactly.
And I also wanted to talk about the women, Pakistani American women, whom I find so inspirational in terms of the things that they are doing and the new barriers that they are actually breaking. We have in our jurisdiction, I can only talk about the 11 states that I I'm responsible for, and of the 4 elected officials, 3 are women. So we have 2 assembly members who are women of Pakistani descent, who are actually assembly members, and there are no Pakistani male assembly members.
That's a very interesting fact. I'm sure not a lot of people are aware of that. That's
we
a
have
great
one in Connecticut as well.
Okay.
So we have 4, as I said,
Yes.
and one senator in Connecticut whose name is Dr. Saud Anwar. But we have more women
than men. Yeah.
And women are amazing in terms of the work that they are doing and the leadership that they are showing, and the barriers, as I said, that
they're breaking.
Quite inspirational.
Yeah. In fact, that's a great note to end our conversation. A great message for women out there who are trying to emulate women like her and all the other women that are achieving laurels every day. Obviously, we need to work hard on creating less hurdles for women, break the thought process where women has to prove herself twice as much as a man to earn the same amount of respect, earn the same amount of salary, because there should be no such discrepancies, there should be no such discriminations. Thank you, Ayesha. Thank you for a great conversation. Yes, it was same here. It was lovely meeting you. Thank you so much.
Lovely meeting you as well. Thank you.